Welcome to A Day in the Life of one of our residents here at Spring Farm Care's Animal and Nature Sanctuary. Today, we're going to be hanging out with Ned. Ned was born in 2012 and has been with us since 2022. Ned lives in one of our communal cat rooms, which he shares with his roommates Dandy, Tutti Frutti, and Santa Claus. Ned's room has a great view of one of the entrances to the hall, which allows him to keep a close eye on staff as they come in and out of the building, and in the wintertime as they work diligently to keep the walkways shoveled. In the morning, Ned is waiting at the door to greet our staff and kindly remind them to hurry up with his breakfast. Ned has had urinary complications in the past, so he eats a special diet to prevent any further issues. After breakfast, it's time for Ned's morning meds. As you can see, he's gotten very accustomed to this routine and is usually totally cooperative with staff. Ned's daily medication regimen helps manage his pain, which originally stemmed from an accident that happened when he was a young cat in his previous home. This accident left his back legs disfigured and resulted in chronic pain for poor Ned. When Ned came to us, he was not the sweet, outgoing cat you see here. He was withdrawn and hard to work with and even required sedation for any exams. Shortly after Ned got here, we discovered that he had severe osteoarthritis throughout both of his back legs due to his previous injuries. We realized that Ned was in a lot of pain on a daily basis, which explained his unfriendly behavior. We started treating Ned's condition immediately, and after his pain began to dissipate, his behavior began to change drastically, and he blossomed into the friendly, lovable, outgoing cat you see here. After Ned's breakfast and morning medication, it's of course time for a tongue bath. Then, before you know it, it's lunchtime. Ned's afternoon schedule usually consists of some playing, spying on staff, interacting with visitors, and of course, plenty of naps. In the evening, it's dinner time, then our staff goes home and Ned gets a good night's sleep so he can wake up and do it all again tomorrow. We are so happy to have Ned be a part of the family here on the farm, and we're grateful to him for entertaining us with his spunkiness and for serving as a reminder of how animals can transform with the right treatment.
Hi, everyone. I'm glad you got to see Ned. Ned is a very special cat, and I was involved in Ned getting here to the farm originally, and when we were contacted by a person who had rescued Ned and was helping him and was out of state on a job, actually, and needed some help. And so Ned was actually driven here all the way from Pennsylvania because we took him because of his special needs, and we thought we could really help him. And his person that rescued him loved him and loves him still, and really wanted just the right home for Ned. So I think it's important with Ned's story because Ned is very special. And I think you should look at your animals at home too, because when we know behavior changes, now we didn't know Ned from the beginning. His first rescuer did. He had known him for a long time. And he was actually rescued from a barn where he lived, where he got injured. He got injured in the barn. When you see a personality change that is like that, like really grumpy, or doesn't like to be handled, sometimes it bears the question, could there be an issue where there's pain that you don't know? I mean, in Ned's case, it was more obvious because he had these injuries, so we went looking for that. But sometimes we get animals in here that are really cantankerous, or they don't want to be handled, and sometimes it's just personality, and we respect that and give them their space. But it also urges us to ask them, are you hurting anywhere? Is anything happening? And not just from an animal communication perspective, but also from a veterinary perspective, primarily from a veterinary perspective, because animals frequently will hide injuries or hide chronic pain, because that's a survival mechanism for them. It's an innate need that they do that. So in Ned's case, when we started treating his osteoarthritis, the change in him was amazing and clearly shows how much better he feels. So I think there's a lesson here for everybody in here, and Ned is our example, that when you do have a situation like that, you really do need to check them out to see if there's pain somewhere. Osteoarthritis in cats is more common than anybody realizes. And I think it's now there's more being known about it now, and there are also some drugs now on the market that can treat that make it easier on cats, because I think that's something that's overlooked a lot. So on behalf of Ned, I want to say it's take a fresh look at some of the animals in your own house too, because that may be helpful information. Another great example is a horse we have here named Nell. Nell came from a animal cruelty case, and she had a badly damaged eye. She had her best horse friend died. Unfortunately, they were both rescued alive together, but she also lost the rest of her herd. All died at the scene. So she came in with a lot of emotional baggage, which we understood. She acted like she hadn't been handled very much. And we were trying to treat her eye, and she was extremely resistant to having her eye treated. She was extremely difficult for veterinary care. But yet, when you spent time with Nell, you just knew that deep in this horse was a really loving, kind, soft horse. But we couldn't see that at first. She was very difficult. What we began to realize is, as we were treating the eye medically, is that this eye was much more painful than we realized, and probably had been painful for quite some time. And we did everything we could to save the eye. We treated her for quite a long time, actually, to see if we could save it. And in the end, it got to a point where we clearly were not making any kind of headway, so we ended up having her eye removed. Within a day after her eye surgery to have her eye removed, this horse went from being very difficult and head shy and just hard to handle to being this amazingly docile, loving creature. And that was pain. I mean, she had been in all that pain. So we see it quite readily here. It's something that we see frequently. I have endless stories about animals that are like that. And there are also animals too that are just really grumpy. We had another horse here named Whisper, who was perpetually grumpy and pinned her ears all the time. And her issue was more emotional than psychological. Not that she didn't have physical pain; she did. She also had she had old injuries that led to chronic pain. So we wrote a lot of her behavior off to pain, and in that case, it was actually the opposite. Her trouble was actually caused more by the psychological trauma of what she went through, and she felt that every human in her life had betrayed her, and that's how she felt. And we did a lot with that. And in her last probably 4 to 6 months of life, we watched her also transform. And it was nice to see that. We didn't expect her life to end when it did. It was a sudden onset of colic and some other issues, complications. But she got that in that last like 6 months, she got to experience a whole different thing. She was coming up to the fence with children and visitors, and was so soft. And she was letting kids pet her that had never pet a horse before, and you could just see how much that meant to her. And she grew enormously in that last year, that she was with us. So it can be different reasons, and but it's important to investigate that.